Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, Monkey Mentor 1 shares with us his path to landing a job in implementation consulting from a non-target with a low GPA. Enjoy. All right, Monkey Mentor 1, thank you so much for joining us today.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Staying busy.
Awesome.
So if you could just start off giving the listeners a little bit of background about kind of what you've been up to in the last year, and that'd be great.
Yep. So just to give you a brief background of myself, I am a recent grad. I graduated in May 2018. Come from a non-target school, low GPA. So I was below 3.2, and I am now implementation / tech consultant, associate consultant at a boutique firm.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about the recruiting and what it was like coming out from a non-target with a low GPA? Were you just completely striking out in interviews? Did you land some interviews? Did you have to go about it a special way?
Yeah. So my first line of reaching out for recruiting wasn't just leveraging my connections, which is probably what I should have gone to first. My first effort was shameless LinkedIn cold emails. I did this mainly to build relationships, as I realized early on in the process, just asking for references wasn't successful. So this meant, getting on phone calls, grabbing coffee, actually building a relationship over the course of a few months. And I ended up doing this pretty late. I went to a school that had an entrepreneurship program, and I will say I got suckered into entrepreneurship.
You dabbled?
Yeah, I dabbled.
Yeah.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is certainly something that's super sexy and like really easy to market, especially for schools nowadays. And I felt like I was sort of lured into the sexiness of entrepreneurship. But yeah, I transitioned away from that, and I was part of the process a little bit late. But coming from a non-target school, it was really helpful to use the alumni database. I think, even if you are at a target school, the alumni database is more than happy to help you out, give you an intro, or get on the phone, even if it's for just 15 minutes, or to grab a cup of coffee. My reply rate on emails to the alumni database, people who attended my school in the past was, I don't know the exact number, but upwards to about 95%.
Wow.
All willing to get on a phone call. Yeah, and that might just be, that's like I said, that's my experience. That might just be because of how small my school was and how, close-knit the community is. But I would say, besides, probably the number one thing that helped the most was the LinkedIn outreach, but the alumni database probably provided the most, because the company I work at now, had somebody from
there. And specifically on the alumni database and your outreach there, was it typically like an email, like a kind of, in quotes, cold email? It's not as cold because it's, the same school, but was it something where you had a certain formula that you use in terms of how to introduce yourself? Is there anything you can kind of give the listeners a little bit of guidance in terms of how to structure that kind of initial outreach, in terms of the ones that, the ones on LinkedIn that are completely cold, and then the ones that are, to the alumni? Is there kind of a difference that you would do?
Yeah, there is a difference. Obviously, coming from the university, they know what your education background is like, and so they know what you've sort of been through.
Yep.
I would say they want to know that if they're going to invest the time, and I would say this probably is across the board, they want to know if they're going to invest the time to connect with you and give you advice and help you out, that they want to make sure that you do your research. I can't tell you how many times now I have people reaching out to me who you can just tell by the way they the way they write their email, the way their lack of responsiveness, that they're not really in it. And I think I suffered from that in the beginning. I was like, I'm going to reach out to these people and they're going to help me out. Well, no, you need to know, the company. You need to know a little bit about their position, or ask them about their position, show that you care. Otherwise, they're not going to be willing to help you out. So I think it's a little naive, and it was naive of me to assume that, I could just say, hey, you want to get on a call and help me get a job at so-and-so firm? I'm really interested in this. But, I think they really appreciate you. I mean, people like talking about themselves, right? So
right.
If you're asking them about their experience and, leveraging their expertise to learn as opposed to get me into the firm, they're more than happy to help you out. And I would say it's the same for myself as I've experienced it over just as an entry level position, having people reach out to me.
Makes sense. And then in terms of, so, you were able to start kind of building those real relationships, coffee chats and all. Is that what eventually ended up getting you an offer at a firm? Was you said, kind of it was through the alumni network, but was that something that took a long time? Was that like a 3-month thing? Was it a 5-month? Was it a long process? I guess is the question.
I think it could have been a longer process. Mm-hmm. I had the advantage of going to school in the same city that the job was being, offered in, and I had gone home. Was out of state, so I actually offered. I was like, I am going to fly in, and I will come see you guys and interview. And I think that probably expedited the process, but just showing that initiative and having that connection probably helped them reconsider, because if I'm being honest, I did not perform well on the case interviews. Mm-hmm. And I can get into that a little bit later, but I think my initiative and my quick learning helped me get into the firm.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more? I'm not very familiar with the implementation consulting world. Can you give me just maybe a brief summary in terms of the type of work that you guys do? What clients what you're helping your clients with specifically on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So this implementation consulting is something that nobody really talks about much. Everyone really, when they think of consulting, thinks of strategy or management consulting. And it's a little bit different, honestly, because all the big firms in that space, in the strategy consulting space, in the MBB world, they all have their own practices of implementation consulting.
Right.
And then there's sort of like this middle tier of a bunch of smaller firms that can, dedicate more resources. And it's a little bit more interpersonal, as opposed to, we're going to implement this software for you and then get the fuck out.
Right.
I don't know if I can swear.
No, you can't. It's fine. That's fine. It's fine.
So, I mean, what's different for me as opposed to someone who's at a firm like Bain doing implementation consulting is that I have 2 responsibilities, one being project work and the other being post-production support. And what that project work is probably your more traditional consulting. It's, teams of 3 to 5 working to help the client implement the system. It's road mapping. It's a lot of calls, and my main role within that is the data translations. So I play the support role as an entry-level associate to make sure that the data's transitioning, that I'm meeting with, the people on the client side to make sure that what they have in their business can be recreated in the system, because they're like, if I would give.
Should I real quick? Should I think of this as like CRM systems, like back end systems? Correct. For like databases, correct. Stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Anything from like Oracle systems, PeopleSoft, Salesforce.
Got it. Okay.
The ecosystem spans all those systems.
Got it.
And I can sort of kind of get into, if you feel like you're settling for implementation consulting as opposed to strategy, how you can sort of frame it if you want to do the transition. But yeah, so you're pretty much strategizing a way to help the client implement this system. The best analogy would be the company or the software is the Legos, and we are the people that put the Legos together.
Got it. Great.
And then the second side of the job would be the post-production support, which is just a ticketing system where you do like break fix enhancements, and that's just based on incoming requests.
Got it. And are these, you said like Oracle, SAP, all this stuff. So oftentimes it's like a third party vendor. Do you have to actually become like an expert in those systems, or how do you actually get even trained for that? Or is it more like you're working with other third party consultants to kind of help the client interface?
Hmm. That's something that's interesting about working for a smaller firm. At a bigger firm, you need to go through the certification process.
Right.
You need to get a formal certification, otherwise they don't want you. Whereas I'm being groomed as a consultant, and I'm not necessarily marketed to the clients as a, insert system here expert, and which is what I like. I like that I'm not sort of pigeonholed into something, and I have more exit ops as opposed to somebody that's like, I'm going to be Salesforce certified, and then they're like, oh shit, I want to go to Oracle now.
Right.
And that's never something that interested me. I just like the multiple project streams. So I would definitely, if you're doing implementation consulting, recommend that, unless you want to be an expert.
Got it. Okay. And then in terms of like a typical day, week, do you mind giving us a little bit of a kind of flavor of that?
Yep. So, I mean, like I said, there's two parts
Mm-hmm.
to the job. There's the project work and then the ticketing. The ticketing is usually what I try to handle first, just because it's break fix. I handle financial reporting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll usually, a financial statement looks the same regardless of where you go, or pretty much the same. So it's
Right.
I pretty much have that down to a science. If I get a ticket, something's not pulling in, I go in and fix it, get that covered, check my emails. That's usually my morning. And then it sort of gets into the nitty gritty. The travel is minimal, probably 25%.
Okay.
So I don't do a lot of that on a week-to-week basis. I know that's something that a lot of people are interested in for consulting. I wish I could do it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually been on any trips, which it's been nice, but sometimes it's the attractiveness of consulting is the ability to be in different boardrooms and be with decision makers, and I do that just on like a video conference or on a phone call. So that's
right.
usually what my project work consists of, and then the rest is just head down doing data translations.
Got it. Okay. And then specifically, any one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self? Meaning, I know you've only been in the industry for a little while, but like if you had to look back to like, just say your sophomore year, is there something you would have told yourself?
Yeah, I'd say probably choose a better concentration / major, depending on what kind of school you go to, and then shoot for the top organizations for internships.
Mm-hmm.
The top firms. My initial goal was strategy consulting, and I had to settle for. I hate to say settle because I love my job, but I had to sort of settle for implementation consulting because it was my second option due to low GPA and a late transition towards more technical, traditional roles. Just like entrepreneurship, just avoid it at all costs.
I think that's different from what a lot of people are hearing nowadays out there. I think it's not right for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people get suckered into that. But question about the management consulting. I'm curious, with your GPA coming from a non-target, were you able to get any looks, even get an interview, or was it just like you're just roadblocked?
So that's something I actually talked a lot about with some of my mentors. If you're hitting the right resume screening buzzwords, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I was always proud of my GPA. I put it on my resume, and I think that probably knocked me off of a lot of
processes. Yeah.
Of processes. Yeah. So like I said, I was always okay with talking about it. And I think that's something that's important. If you have a narrative that goes along with it, and I had to have that conversation with my current employer. I dealt with some health complications my first 3 years of college, which I am now over, which is good.
Yep.
But, that contributed a lot to it. And firms do understand that, but you need to get in the door before you can have that conversation. So
Absolutely.
For anyone with a low GPA, I would recommend. Out of college, it's a little bit tough, but as an experienced hire, if you need to get that implementation consulting job or that boutique management consulting firm job, get a couple of years under your belt, and then frame yourself as an experienced hire as opposed to a recent grad hire. It's much easier to get in the door.
Absolutely. I would second that 100%. I think once you have those few years of experience, you become so much more marketable, especially if you've done well and you have decent references and stuff. But okay, so real quick, any funny or interesting stories from your first your first gig out of school, or anything from friends you'd like to share?
Nothing too interesting. Just being in an office that, we're all tech consultants. We're all on calls, and it's the age of the AirPods, and no one really knows if someone's listening to music or on a call. And I've had a situation where I think it was me. Yeah, I went up to a coworker who was on a call, and I was kind of bad mouthing the client. I was bad mouthing another client, but it didn't look good. But thankfully, it was somebody that we know, and
it's a good lesson there. Beware of AirPods.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was funny, but it happened.
Nice. And then, do you mind sharing your pay or a range of pay for your this specific role? Kind of what people could expect at a implementation consulting kind of smaller firm.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if my position is representative of it. I started around. I'm totally comfortable talking about it. I started around 60, and quickly moved up to around 75 in the first few months. So I think just because it was maybe due to the size of my firm, they wanted to make sure that I was going to stay.
Right.
And then once you're going to stay, they'll quickly bump you up.
Nice. And then, next steps. What do you think for your next steps? You're going to be there for a few years. You thinking maybe try to transition to strategy? You thinking maybe stay in implementation? What's the thoughts there?
Yeah, so there's a few options. I'll just cover all of them.
Yep.
And then I'll kind of get into what I was going to do. Probably the biggest and most popular for people in my space is to move to a bigger implementation consulting firm. So like a Bain or BCG. BCG is probably the best because they've really adopted the whole tech vibe. So something like that would be good. The other option would be going client side. That's something that I have zero interest in, just because I see how these clients operate, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. And I feel sorry for anybody that decides to do it. And then the final option would be a pivot to strategy as an experienced hire. This probably should be done before you reach the principal consultant level, because at that point you would be considered what they call an architect. And I think you're a little bit too pigeonholed at that point, and it's a little bit too technical and much harder to make the switch. Whereas if you get your first position out of college, wait a couple of years and really do some good work and put your head down, you have a much better opportunity to pivot into strategy with some good networking and case prep, which I would like to stress.
Nice. So I guess to wrap up, we often like to play a little fun game called Silver Bananas, where I mention a topic or opinion and you give it anywhere between 0 and 5 silver bananas. So 0 being you strongly disagree and 5 bananas being you strongly agree. So I'm just going to make a statement and then you just shoot out a score. How does that sound?
Got it.
All right, ready? Consulting is underrated.
2.
It's easy to land interviews. It's hard to land offers.
4.
Soft skills are underrated.
I'll give that a 0.
Okay. Employment options for undergraduates today have never been better.
Put that at a 3.
Okay. And students looking for their first job should value the quality of the experience over the pay.
It's a tough one.
You're like, you need to get paid, right, man?
Yeah, 4.
All right. Fair enough. Great. So no, I really appreciate it. Again, this is Monkey Mentor 1. If you guys want to chat with him, then feel free to join the AMA that's ongoing right now. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you joining.
Thanks.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.